Welcome to Living the Smarter Science of Slim, where we provide a scientifically proven lifestyle for long-term health and fat loss by eating more and exercising less, but smarter.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Hey everyone, Jonathan Bailor here with another bonus Smarter Science of Slim podcast. And very excited about today's show. We have a guest, just a wonderful woman who has, in some ways, was a bit like, could see into the future, because this woman was saying things which are quote unquote trendy now. she was saying these things decades ago and actually explaining the science behind why they are true decades ago, and has since helped to heal and treat the root biological causes rather than just throwing medication at symptoms for tens of thousands of people, again, for decades. She is the proprietor of bodyecology.com. She's also the author of the Body Ecology Diet. She's also the author of a book called The Guide to Growing Younger, which is another wonderful resource. We have none other than the Donna Gates on the show today. Donna, welcome.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm just really happy to be here. And I want you to know I love your website and your name. The Science of Being Slim is so cool.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Donna. Well, that's why one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, because core to your work is this distinction that the body is a hugely complicated and interconnected system, and that doesn't mean that health has to be complicated, but it does mean that a focus on root causes, a focus on treating the entire system rather than just throwing drugs at it is so critical. And you've been doing this for decades. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Well, I was sick myself, so I think a lot of people get into this field because they aren't well, and I wanted to find answers for myself. But I guess now, looking back over all this time, there's always a bit of destiny or fate to what we are doing. We don't even know it, maybe. But, I like to teach. That's another kind of natural trait that I have, is if I learn something, I want other people to know it if I think it's useful. And I'm much happier if I get a chance to teach people. So I learned, and then I teach, and then I learn and I teach. And I was especially, when I met Dr. Crook, William Crook, years ago, I learned that there was something called yeast infection. I knew for sure that I was one of those millions of women that had this problem, but there were really no answers. And so I like to find answers. And so I started this long, intensive search that I'm still, on today, really, and finding answers for candidiasis. Now, it's such a huge problem, and really everybody has it, and babies today babies are born with it, and this has been going on for a couple of decades now. So we've got a couple of generations of people with systemic yeast infections from their whole life on. And so, body ecology was first put together for people with systemic yeast problems, because I understood the condition and how serious it was and how critical it was to eat right. So you have to be in a gluten-free, casein-free, and sugar-free diet. And every time I would look at different other types, for example, when I started working, stepping into the raw food community and taking a look at what was going on there, and trying to begin to teach people who were into raw food about the importance of fermented foods, I could see there was so much sugar that people eat when they're raw, but they think it's legal because, it's raw. And
Yep.
And then when I started working with autistic children years ago, I went to see the booths where we'd go to a conference, and there'd be all these booths with all these cookies and breads and pancake mixes and things like that the parents could buy supposedly for their kids because they were gluten-free, but they were loaded with sugar and bad fats and everything. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's so much teaching to do, so much. But I do actually have an ability to see into the future. I appreciate you saying that, Jonathan. And so even today, of course, I'm still looking way ahead. And I know that we're in trouble, big trouble. Our children are really a huge concern for me. And so the autism is just trying to be a wake-up call for us. It's a sign that that this generation is really probably going to be the last generation to very few of them are going to be able to reproduce. So we're going to be looking at a time where having a healthy baby becomes rare and precious, and we're going to put a lot of care and attention into bringing children into the world that are healthy. And then I think what's going to happen then is we've made so many mistakes for so long, and we're in a time right now where we're very clear about those mistakes. Now we have to start cleaning up the mess and creating a world here where we can finally be healthy again, and where babies can be born. And that's always my vision. Every single day I wake up with that intention, is that there will be a world, I'm going to help create it, where babies are born and there's only healthy available. We don't even have bad junk anymore.
Well, we share that vision for sure, Donna. And I want to spend the rest of our time together, if you don't mind, really in two parts, because I love this. I mean, truly, in 1994, you were talking about stevia. And stevia is the hot new thing today, 20 years later.
I brought stevia here. It's here because of me. And there was the green leaf that was available, but nobody liked that. Yep. And I knew you can't say to people, don't have sugar, without giving them something that tastes good to replace it. And so I had heard that the Japanese had this stevia, this extract that they were using in Japan, and just commercially, it wasn't even available in Japan. And I got it and brought it in and started selling it when it was illegal to do that. Nice. So it was like selling drugs, I guess, except this one was really, really a good one. And I got a lot of wonderful doctors, Robert Atkins, Julian Whitaker, and Andy Weil, all were onto it, and they helped me get it out there into the world. And then eventually the ban was lifted as a dietary supplement. And now, of course, it's fully approved as a sweetener, but it's very safe. And it's there's different quality of stevia out there. We've always had a very delicious tasting one, but some people, unfortunately, have bad stevia experiences. But, in those days, we had NutraSweet and Equal. That was it. And the world has now opened up to much better choices. So we're on the right track now. That's what I feel like I have my role a lot of times, to be a catalyst, just to help us get on the right track.
Well, and speaking of getting on the right track, the other area that I wanted to get your take on, because this was, again, you were there decades before, potentially even it's definitely not the mainstream, but it's becoming more mainstream. And that is the importance of gut health, right? With a lot of the paleo and ancestral movement, and a lot of people talk about Rob Wolf and it's gut health. And you've been talking about gut health for literally decades. So the question I want to ask you, Donna, is what do you like about the modern discussion involving gut health, and where do you think we may have veered off track?
Well, it is the hot topic in functional medicine. And by the way, there are doctors called functional medicine doctors, and they're the only doctor you want to find your way to. They're in a whole enlightened class. And they study the gut all the time. There's some specialists that's just among them that study the gut. And so it's amazing how much we know. And our old timers, people hundreds of years ago, said disease begins in the gut. So obviously health begins there too. But today we have the science behind that. And it's just more true than ever. There's what comes into our body, this digestive tract that runs through the middle of our body, is our interaction with the outside world. And there's literally one cell, one cell thick layer between us and the outside world. So we eat food from the outside world, we bring it into our body. It's got to get into the inside of our body, into the blood, into the organs. And there's one little layer that's there guiding and protecting us. And all this bacteria are right there too to protect us. So we're beginning to understand the importance of this gut bacteria and what it's doing. And so years ago, yes, I started digging out of obscure research to find out, why are these bacteria inside of us and what are they doing? And they do so many absolutely essential things. But today, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of studies, sometimes just on one bacteria in particular. The drug companies can see that this is the future. Antibiotics don't work. The way of the future is have this healthy gut with all these good, healthy bacteria in us and on us, on our skin and inside our body, inside our digestive tract. And then that's going to be the new medicine of the future. So it's a really, really exciting thing. That, and the fact that too, we have we have this amazing study of now understanding of our genes and the important genes. There are certain genes that are specifically related to diet. So it's called nutritional genomics, where we're looking at our genes, and the genes say, well, can I handle saturated fat or not? Can I handle olive oil or not? So I'm really, really excited that finally we have answers like this available to us, so that we stop arguing with each other about what's the best diet. We'll stop doing that completely. And what we'll start saying is, okay, I'm a very unique person. What is the right diet for me? And then you'll genetically, that never changes. Once you get that done at some point in your life, for the rest of your life, you know exactly what foods you can and cannot put into your body. And then, of course, you've got to digest those foods, and that's where the healthy gut comes in. That's so very, very critical. And and having fermented foods in your diet, if you want, you don't have to be a scientist. You can just simply eat fermented foods, and the most amazing thing happens, because nature, like on a head of cabbage, for example, there's these a very sophisticated symbiotic relationship of these bacteria on this head of cabbage, and some yeast too, good yeast. And you shred that up and pack it in a jar, and then wait a week and then start eating it. You're bringing all that wisdom of nature into your body to start protecting you. And they make all kinds of B vitamins for you. They help you digest your food. They help keep the inside of you clean, so that your whole rest of your body stays clean, all your cells stay clean. It's just awesome what some of the simplest things that we can do, like something just simply eating fermented cabbage, for example, can do for our well-being. So I'm really excited about, like you said in the very beginning, Jonathan, the science of the body is extraordinarily complex. But as you study that, you find out that, but it always comes back to the exact same thing. You can look at the complexity of our genes, and then it comes right back down to what we put in our body, either expresses those genes or silences them. So you might have inherited the genes for diabetes, like I have. I have never a fear in the world that I'll ever have that problem, because I have control over that by what I put in my body. Mm-hmm. And after a while, I'll never express those genes. And then after a while, they're not even passed on into the next generations. We can get rid of those problems, and that's where we need to go.
Well, Donna, I think that's such a profound distinction, because so often, again, there's this still in the mainstream, right? There's this belief that a calorie is a calorie, and it's just about calorie minimization or reducing calories, and that misses this whole critical aspect of food quality. And one of the things you talked about with like genetic sensitivities is we all know of people that may have like a nut allergy, and we tend to only think of like there are people that have allergies, and if they eat this, they die. That's maybe overstating, but what we're also beginning to realize, and I think is just so empowering for people, is that while you may not have that level of intolerance for certain substances, like it goes way beyond the calories. Certain quote unquote foods are literally not tolerated by some people's bodies in any quantity. And once you that is such an empowering bit of information.
Well, one of the things too, there are certain foods, like, because we can look at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tests, for example, gene tests, and not a single person that's anyone's ever seen so far can do carbs, can do a high carb diet, not a high carb diet. Now, I happen to be in a category. Another thing I inherited, unfortunately, is the inability to make enough GABA. So I actually take GABA. GABA is an amino acid that your brain makes some to use in the brain. Your body makes some, and it's a really important amino acid. Most people don't realize this, but brand new research shows that GABA is very important for regulating blood sugar. So you can become diabetic with low levels of GABA. So here I have like two strikes against me. I've inherited the genes to be a diabetic, and then this issue with not making enough GABA. So I take GABA, but as a because we can do that now. We have these great supplements. But the thing is, like I happen to be in that category of people that do need a small amount of carbohydrates every single day, or I'll stop sleeping. And I started noticing this in myself and in other people, because I do a lot of consultations, and I said, nobody's sleeping anymore. And then I'd start looking, why? Well, sometimes, very often, it has a lot to do with a woman's hormones, or for women in particular. But this other issue is they were often on a really high protein diet, and they were on a high protein diet because they were avoiding sugar because they were trying to avoid, bring their yeast infection under control. But which is a good thing to do in the beginning. But the quinoa and millet, because they're seeds and they're high in protein, but they're grain-like in the sense that they have the calming quality that grains have, and rich in B vitamins and magnesium, for example. And so when you eat them, particularly for your last meal of the day, which is what we recommend in Body Ecology, is that you have your animal protein between 11 and 2. It's the best time for the day for the body. Some people need a couple of small animal protein meals during the day, but then let dinner be a vegetarian meal with these grain-like seeds in them, and you'll notice that you'll sleep better. You will make more GABA and more serotonin. You need these to make healthy levels of serotonin, brain chemicals, and dopamine even too. And then you also need both the thyroid and the adrenals need a small amount of these to work properly. But same thing, you can't go the other way either and drop the protein altogether, because the same organs, the thyroid and the adrenals, they need a little bit of protein. They thrive best on a little bit of animal protein. So, of course, you can be 100% vegetarian. Let's say that's your religion and you have to be. Then you can, compensate for that. But the ideal would be to have a small amount of animal protein, even as a broth, and it doesn't have to be much, but it has to be enough that just animal protein is a grounding quality. And when people give it up, they will get weaker and more spacey. The brain needs animal protein, and so you get spacey, and you can tell that. And somebody who's a vegan, let's say for a long period of time, they're so sweet and so loving, and just their heart is full of love. But try to carry on a complex conversation with them. They can't go there. The brain's not going to make it.
Well, and Donna, what I really love about what you're bringing up here is, again, I think some listeners may hear this and hopefully they don't think this because they've heard other podcasts, but they might think like, oh my gosh, like Donna just recommended quinoa, and the Smarter Science of Slim is like, does not recommend grains. And I think actually I was speaking with Dr. Daniel Amen a few weeks back, who I'm a big fan of, and he made this wonderful point, which was there's a reason there's 8,000 different diets out there, because there's 8,000 different types of people out there. So it's not, again, so much time on the internet is spent with this person saying, no, this one way of eating is right and perfect for everyone in all circumstances. And then this person says, well, no, it's not. Like, here's an example of where it's not true. And we just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
And you can keep pulling up the science to prove either point.
Exactly.
The real science to pull up, though, is your genes.
Exactly. And that is the bottom line. Like, I recently got a question on Facebook where people were talking about this new, I don't know, someone in somewhere is making a scientific case that sugar is actually therapeutic and that you should avoid green vegetables. And rather than getting into a scientific debate, which is, I don't even think worth it for something as ludicrous as that, but that's my personal opinion, that if you think that might work, try it. If you have some weird genetic mutation where that actually works for you, that's awesome. But if it doesn't, and it won't for most people, then don't, and let yourself be the arbiter of what is or isn't the right thing to put in your body.
Well, see, Jonathan, like, you're young and you're handsome, but as people get older, they still have this thing called a mirror that they have to look into. And if you want to not like the way you look in the mirror, eat sugar and put yourself through a lot of stress. And that is the best recipe I know out there for aging quickly and aging badly. Like, you'll look awful, you'll feel awful. And, then you see these other people that are 50, 60, 70 years old, and they have all this energy and they're happy, and they nobody likes to see yourself aging, but at least you look and you say, okay, well, I'm aging pretty well for somebody who's 60 or 70 years old. So, that's really where we're going right now. It's really it's a potential for people. And if they're going to be stubborn like that and argue for sugar, then let them, because obviously they don't mind going down that track and experiencing life that way. I have no intention of living the rest of my life like that.
Well, and Donna, an analogy I like to use, which again really hits home to what we're talking about here, is analogy, or actually that's not the right word, making an analogy between happiness and between health, where to say that like this is how to be happy, like every single person should follow these steps and they will be happy. Certainly there's guidelines, like there's principles. Like if you're mean to people and you're ungrateful, you will probably be less happy than if you're nice to people and you're very grateful. Like, and in fact, that's been demonstrated scientifically. But no, there is no book, there is no program that will literally say for every person on the planet, if you follow these steps exactly, you will be happy, because our psychology is unique. Our genes are unique. And I believe the same thing applies to our health. Of course, there's principles. Of course, like vegetables are better for you than processed garbage. That's true. That's true, without question. But we've got to customize, like you just said there. Anyone who is following the Smarter Science of Slim, if for some reason your sleep is worse and you try this approach that Donna is recommending and you get better results, by all means do that, because the key is pragmatism. Does it work in real life or not?
See, there's not much science behind blood type. I met Dr. Peter Giordano, who wrote the book Eat Right for Your Type. Well, I met his father back 35 years ago and learned about blood type, and I was really intrigued by it. For one thing, I was blood type A, and he was. James, the father was A, and he knew a lot about A's. And so all that time, I mean, many years now, I've been asking people, what's your blood type? You know, they call me for a consultation, or they call me because their child has autism. And I say, well, what's your blood type? What's your son's blood type? And so I have, as you can imagine, vast amount of experience getting answers from people.
Don't stop listening yet. If you like the podcast, if there's other ways we can help you, please join us in the Smarter Science of Slim support group, which is freely available at the Smarter Science of Slim website, smarterscienceofslim.com. There you'll find all kinds of free recipes and success stories and just all kinds of fun stuff, like how to help your kids go sane. Just great community
and their
content.
body's simpler in a lot
And
of
just
ways.
one last thing
a
before you
body
go,
if
you wouldn't mind heading over to iTunes
if you're an
and
A,
up onto
it's a whole different story,
Amazon.com and
because
leaving us
A's
a
early in
review,
life begin
and then
to
going over to
have trouble
Facebook and
digesting
liking us. We would
protein, so
hugely
they
appreciate
become
it.
protein malnourished. Now, this is something I figured out by connecting a bunch of research dots. But they had done research on these children in Africa, and they were protein malnourished. So what they noticed is their cortisol levels went up. And so when you're protein deficient, protein malnourished, and you might say, well, that's not me because I eat protein every day. That has nothing to do with it. If you're eating all this protein, are you really digesting it? Is it really breaking down? Is it getting into your cells and giving your cells the amino acids that it needs? So if you're protein malnourished, your cortisol levels will always be high. And what happens when cortisol goes up? Well, you always have this kind of chattering, busy mind, and you are a little bit kind of like anxiety, I'd say is the right word. And then you also, your sugar, when cortisol's up, your sugar is always going to be much higher. You're always going to be estrogen dominant. So what happens is I can almost very, very often I can identify an A because they're not as muscular, because now they're not as, they're not absorbing protein, so they're more mushy and they're more estrogen dominant, and so the problem isn't that they're an A versus an O. The problem really is they don't digest protein well. They need very little of it, but they've got to digest it, and they've got to find sources like, we have a green drink called Vitale Super Green and another fermented super spirulina, and they're super potent ways to get protein into your body immediately. And so that's what you got to start looking for, is other ways to get protein other than animal protein, because those people need the protein for sure, but they need to get it in ways that are real easy for them to digest. And then what happens is they catch up on their protein, their nails get, like you can tell somebody, a lot of times A's will tell you, I have ridges on my fingernails, ridges that, longitudinal ridges that go from the where your finger grow out to the tip. If you can feel your fingernails and they're kind of rough, then you know that you're protein malnourished. Even if you're eating a lot of protein, you're protein malnourished. So, this whole issue of protein, no matter what I look at, detoxification, whatever I look at, I see people are looking at it. It's such a childlike, immature, naive level. We have to keep looking deeper, deeper, deeper to find the truth about something. And the truth about protein is we all need it. And animal protein is very strengthening, and it does help raise testosterone levels. If I were the head of this country and I were going to build an army of soldiers, I'd test them all and make sure they were blood type O, and then I'd feed them a lot of animal protein, and I would never give them any carbs, and I'd send them off to war, and I'd win the war. But hopefully there are no wars to fight if I'm if I were ruling the world. But anyway, we totally make ourselves by what we eat. But the problem, the issue is always a little more complex, more interesting than we tend to be looking at it.
Absolutely, Donna. And I think, really, truly, folks, if there's one thing you take away from this podcast, like even this morning, I was checking the Facebook page, and we recently had a show where there was some talk about like eggs and dairy and if blah blah blah, and so someone is like, I'm so confused. Like, one of the bits of good news is that if you feel confused about nutrition, there's a very easy way to ameliorate your confusion. If what you're doing makes you feel bad and compromises your health, it's not the right way for you to eat. And if what you're doing makes you feel good and furthers your health and important health markers, then it is good for you to eat. It does not matter what you read on the internet. It does not matter what you heard on the subway. What matters is how it actually works in your body. Right, Donna?
So if you're in a high protein diet and that's working for you, that's right for you. The one thing, there's a couple of things I would add to that. One is that a lot of times people don't think they can eat something because they're really not digesting it. So we're really into teaching people how to prepare the food properly. Let's say eggs, for example. I love for people to eat eggs because they're really good for the brain, really good for the sexual organ system, and the thyroid especially. So if you make your eggs like a really simple recipe. Lately, I've been giving people these little silicone poach pods, and opening up like 3 or 4 egg yolks. This is what I teach them to do: is to open up the egg and get rid of most of the white and put the yolk down in the little pod, and then put like 3 or 4 yolks in there, and then put it down in a little pot of water and put a lid on, and just cook it so that it cooks over the top, but actually inside that yolk is still runny. Those eggs are super, super easy to digest like that. The more you cook that protein, so if you're one of those people that scramble your eggs and you scramble them until they're done, and then you leave them in this hot pan and you set them over to the side and they get really, really overly super done, then you're not going to digest them. So how you prepare the food is really critical. And then always, and I've heard this from people for years, some people say, I can't eat eggs unless I eat them with cultured vegetables, but as soon as I eat them with the fermented vegetables, I digest them just fine. So, that's another thing, is always try to eat something fermented with your meal, because the fermented foods are fantastic digestive aids. And some people just don't digest. They don't have enough stomach acid, and that's where using digestive enzymes are really a must for those people. They need the protein. They just aren't digesting it, and so now it hurts when they eat. It sticks, it stays in their stomach, and it makes them feel bad. So it's a little more like, don't give up and say, I can't eat animal protein, when your body really does still need it. Just figure out why it's not digesting it, and very often it is a digestive and the way the food's prepared.
I love it, Don. I love it. Well, literally, we are just scratching the surface with you here, Donna, because you've been doing this for a long, long time, folks. So we'll definitely have Donna back on the show. But in the meantime, there is, again, levels of what you should be eating, customized to you, how that interacts with your genes, and how that interacts with your genetic expression, and how that interacts with your gut. And the good news is, while that might seem complicated, as Donna alluded to, there is an element of simplicity there, because once you figure that out, and there's great starting points, right? Like there's actually there's some pretty key common denominators. You might need to flick a few switches back and forth, but this is something which, once you crack that, you're good for the rest of your life. So it's just like, once you get your degree, you've got your degree and you're good. So just put that investment in up front. It's the same kind of thing. So please check out Donna's work. She's got a wonderful website at bodyecology.com. She's, of course, got her wonderful book, The Body Ecology Diet, and her other book, The Guide to Growing Younger. And Donna, you have another book coming out pretty soon, correct?
On Gchatification. I can't wait to get that one out there, because I think that, once again, this is a subject that people are looking at from a very shallow, naive point of view. And it's a really important topic to understand. We live in a very toxic time, and our bodies are not very efficient. As a matter of fact, the genes show 60% of Caucasians are quite poor at detoxification. Some people, 15% of us on the planet, 15% of us actually bind heavy metals and toxins. We don't let them out at all. So it's a fascinating subject. I can't wait to have this book out for people.
Well, and Donna, I really, really appreciate you doing that. And I would say for maybe the takeaway for this podcast is appreciate the complexity that is your body, but understand that there's a pretty simple path and to achieving the right diet for you, and that right diet for you is so important. Like, if you're please don't be confused, because if you're confused, I think the only reason you're confused is because you've been fed this message, which is a marketing message, that there is the right answer, and there isn't. There's only your right answer. And that's why it seems confusing, because if you're looking outside of yourself or for someone else to tell you the perfect thing for you, that is going to be confusing. But if you turn inward, it becomes a lot simpler.
And one of the things that we really I think all of us thought leaders, out there trying to change this whole paradigm, so that we have healthy available all the time, I would say what we all agree on is carbs really aren't good for you. I mean, and the genes show that very clearly. No one can do a high carb diet. Well, the other thing too that I'm glad that's starting to come to light, though, is this issue around saturated fat. Some people can take saturated fat, but it should be raw, like raw butter. Versus cooked, pasteurized milk and butter and so on. And some people can't take fat at all. But one thing you really got to watch out is whenever you, for example, if you make a nice broth, put the broth in the refrigerator, wait till the fat comes to the top, and skim all that saturated fat off of there, because that tears up the gut lining. And there's a lot of research that shows that. And that's you might say we can prove anything with research, but that's really clear what it's doing to the gut lining. You can see it tearing up the gut lining and destroying the V-line, everything like gluten does. So gluten's also, the gluten that we eat today is not the original gluten that man had. If you feel like you have to have gluten, you go and order einkorn, EINKORN. You can get einkorn. You can actually get it today, but it's the ancient wheat. But all the wheat that's available to us today has been genetically modified, and it's a very bad poison for the gut. So it's all about protecting the gut, growing this fantastic garden there by eating these great fermented foods, and then digesting things well, chewing well, and so on. And then I think food combining, we always teach about food combining. I think that's really important too, because our bodies are not meant to digest these super complex meals with bacon and eggs and toast and orange juice and a bowl of cereal with milk on top. All that stuff is just horrible for the poor digestive tract to try to, make its way through and digest. So the simpler the meals are, the better they are too. Simple meals.
I love it, Donna. And it certainly sounds like they're a great aspect to these common denominators. If it's this packaged, processed, unnatural, that which consists of 60%, 40 to 60% of the typical Western diet, you can take it to the bank. That's not helping you. So there you go. Start there, and you'll be making wonderful progress. Right, Donna?
Mm-hmm. That's a given.
Well, Donna, thank you so much for joining us today, folks. And like I said, please do check out Donna's wonderful website at bodyecology.com. Check out her book, The Body Ecology Diet, and also her book, The Guide to Growing Younger. Donna, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for the work you do in the world, too. It's great to have young people like you coming along, changing this paradigm. So thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, and listeners, thank you for joining us. And remember, this week and every week after, you can eat more and exercise less and actually feel and live a heck of a lot better as long as you do it smarter. Talk with you soon.